Newsroom, if you are anywhere downtown, you probably heard it and felt it, an explosion of some kind downtown.
My name is Charlie Hanger. I'm a retired trooper with Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and I was acting in that capacity on April the 19th, 1995, when the tragedy struck Oklahoma City, the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Mm-hmm. I went to work that day like I'd had for 18 and a half years, and was just a normal day. And been working the area around Perry and then over toward the Cimarron Turnpike, and while over at the Cimarron Turnpike and at the headquarters there, we began hearing Oklahoma City headquarters dispatching unit after unit to the downtown area. We knew something big had happened, didn't know what. They had actually taken the radio away from all the outlying districts. No one could use the radio unless we had an emergency ourselves, due to the ongoing big emergency in Oklahoma City. We turned on the television there at headquarters and immediately saw what was going on. We could see at least a third of the Murrah building had blown away. The parking lot across the street, vehicles were on fire. You could tell it was total chaos, and by looking at the building, you knew there had to be many injuries and deaths. Well, while watching that, I received a radio call to respond to Oklahoma City to the command post for an assignment. This time running lights and siren back over to the interstate. I start south on Interstate 35 to respond to Oklahoma City. This is where I always say the divine intervention begins, because I don't go a half a mile south on the interstate. I receive a second radio call telling me to stay in my area on routine patrol. And so I'm turning across the center median on the interstate to go back north, because I was aware of a motorist broke down. A continuation of this divine intervention. These two ladies are broke down in this little minivan. One's the wife of an Oklahoma City firefighter, and she's concerned about her husband's involvement in that ongoing tragedy. And so I called them a wrecker, and I sat there and wait for them because their alternator had went out. Now, little did I know, while I was sitting there talking to these ladies, Tim McVeigh, one of the co-conspirators of the bombing, and at that point I didn't even know it had been was a bomb. I thought maybe a natural gas explosion or a boiler blew up in that building, but I never thought a bomb. That never entered my mind when I saw that damage. The wrecker arrives, and I decided to go on north on Interstate 35 and go up to the northwest part of Noble County to look at an accident scene that I had worked several days earlier. And I'm rushing up the interstate. I'm traveling at a rather high rate of speed. I feel like I'm still going to be sent to Oklahoma City sometime during my shift. I want to complete this task. But about a mile before I'm going to exit off the interstate onto a state highway, I pass this old yellow Mercury. He's in the right lane, I'm in the left lane. He's going much slower than I am. As I'm going around him, I notice there's no license tag on the rear bumper. By the time I can react to what I saw, I'm actually ahead of him in the left lane. So I have to slow down, change lanes, and initiate what I thought was just another routine traffic stop. I'd made thousands of routine traffic stops by the end of my career. But when this guy began to pull over, and I could tell he's acknowledging my lights, he's pulling off to the shoulder, but he didn't stop like a normal traffic violator. He pulls his right two wheels plumb in the grass, and leaves his left two wheels on the asphalt shoulder. Most traffic violators will crowd that white line and cause kind of a traffic confusion, and he didn't do that. So I made a mental note that was different. Also, I wasn't trained to walk up on cars like they do today and approach the driver's door or the passenger's door. But I got out and stood behind my open driver's door and yelled for the driver to exit his vehicle. And as I did that, he didn't respond. And so I'm wondering, did he not hear me? So I'm yelling for him to get out of the vehicle. The door opens. He turns around, sits on the seat and looking to the west, away from me, not back toward me. And I thought, what's this guy doing? And so a few seconds lapse, and then he steps out, beginning to walk toward me. I see his hands are empty. I don't feel there's a threat. I meet with him between the two cars. And this is a clean-cut looking guy, you know. He's a tall, slender guy, military-style haircut. He's got on a black military boots, black pants. He's got a windbreaker jacket, just slightly zipped up at the bottom. And it was about the color of what a postman would wear. And he's been cordial. You know, I told him why I'd stopped him, that he didn't have a license plate. And he immediately looked to the rear bumper where that license plate should be, and then quickly looked back at me and he said, "Oh, I knew I didn't have one. I've just recently bought this car. I haven't had time to get one." Well, because officers are taught to read body language and nonverbal communications, I thought, if you knew you didn't have it, why did you look? And so I thought maybe he was driving a stolen car. So I said, "Well, do you have a bill of sale for this car?" Because he told me he had just recently purchased it. He said, "No, I don't have it. The salesman's still filling it out." I said, "How long does it take to fill out a bill of sale?" And he said, "Well, I don't have one." I said, "What about insurance? You got proof of insurance?" "No." So I'm beginning more suspicious that maybe it's stolen. So I said, "Well, what about driver's license? Do you have a driver's license?" And he says, "Yes." And he goes to that right rear pocket to retrieve his billfold. And when he did, it tightened that jacket up on the left side, and I see a bulge that looked like a weapon. He produces a Michigan driver's license. I look at the picture. It looks like the same gentleman I'm talking to. I take that license, stick it in my gun belt, and I tell him, I said, "Hey, I want you to slowly unzip that jacket and slowly pull it back because I want to look under it." Now, he's been very cordial. He's done everything I've asked him to do. Everything's yes, sir, no, sir. He unzips the jacket. He just starts to pull it back, and he looks me right in the eye, and he says, "I have a weapon." At that point, I reach up, I grab the outside of his jacket where the bulge is. I'm spinning him around, telling him, "Get your hands up." And I drew my weapon and stuck it to the back of his head and instructed him to walk to the trunk of his car. He's complying. Until we get about halfway there, he made a statement to me. I thought he was trying to intimidate me. He said, "Well, my weapon is loaded." And I nudged him in the back head with the barrel of my pistol, and I said, "Well, so is mine." And we continued our walk. I get him to the trunk, and I pull his jacket back, and I see there's a pistol and a shoulder holster, but the barrel is pointed up toward his armpit, and the grips are down below. And so I thought, no, I think that statement wasn't out of intimidation. It was out of fear because I had such a tight grip on that weapon. I think he was afraid I might accidentally discharge it. And so I removed it, threw it to the shoulder. He immediately says, "I have a knife and a scabbard under my jacket." I find it, removed it. He said, "I have a magazine for that weapon under there." I find that, removed it, handcuffed him, finished searching him, found no more weapons, and I took him and locked him up in my car. You know, one thing led to another. I searched his car. He granted permission for me to search his car, even though I didn't need his permission to search the immediate area where he was sitting. But I wanted to search the whole car, and he easily granted that permission. He decided to leave his car there at the roadside and not have it impounded. There had been an envelope on the front seat that was it was a legal-sized envelope, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. It was sealed up, and as I mashed on it, I thought, that felt like cash, money in there, but I didn't have any probable cause to open it. And as I was looking at that envelope and then turning around to see what he had in the rear seat, I look in my patrol car, and my prisoner is squirming around in his seat, and I thought he was trying to get out of his handcuffs. So I go back, open the door, and say, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you trying to get out of your cuffs?" And he said, "No, they're too tight." So I get him out, check him, loosen him a little bit, put him back in there, and secured him back in the front seat. I asked him if he wanted to take that envelope or any other personal belongings that he deemed valuable with him to the jail, as he had already told me he wanted to leave his car at the roadside at his own risk. And he said, no, just leave that envelope there. I don't have anything I need. Just lock my car up and I'm good. We go to the Noble County Jail. He's booked in. During the booking process, the jailer and I are watching television and seeing the ongoing tragedy, and we still yet don't know it's a bombing. I could see him looking at that television occasionally, but never saying anything, and never making any comments, even though we were commenting about what we were seeing. After that, he's taken into the custody of the sheriff, locked down. I go down to turn my evidence into the sheriff, and while in the sheriff's department, I get a call from my headquarters wanting me to go to the interstate and look for a brown Chevrolet pickup occupied by 3 Middle Eastern males believed to be involved in the bombing of the Murrah building. That's when I found it was a bomb and not something else. So I respond to the interstate, sit out there for about an hour, don't see anything matching that description. I'm released from that assignment and turned in my reports to the district attorney and finished my shift, and I'm ready to start 3 days off. I go home. Now we drove our own units. Each trooper had his own unit, and I took my unit home with me. I'm watching the coverage like everybody else is on television. And 2 days later, that occurred on a Wednesday, the bombing occurred on a Wednesday. 2 days later, about mid-morning, I get a call from my headquarters wanting to know if I had stopped an individual that had a social security number that they read it off to me in the first 3 numbers in the 100 series. And I said, well, I think it was the guy that I arrested Wednesday, but I'd have to call the sheriff's office and look at his booking card. Say, would you do that? I did. I don't know why they were checking. You know, in a paramilitary organization, you don't ask many questions. You just follow your orders. And so I called, and sure enough, it was Tim McVeigh's social security number. And I called him back, and I said, yeah, that's the guy I jailed Wednesday. They said, well, is he still in jail? I said, well, I doubt it. You know, all misdemeanor charges. He had some money on him. He probably made bond the next day and is gone. Again, will you check? Called back, and they said, well, yes, he is still here and getting ready to go before the judge. And so I called them back, and my headquarters tells me, you need to call the command post in Oklahoma City, speak to the major on duty. I do that, and I find out he's a suspect in the bombing. I'm instructed to call the sheriff, put a hold on him for the FBI, and that they would be in touch with the sheriff shortly. Well, I called the sheriff. He's a friend of mine and a former trooper. And, you know, law enforcement officers pull jokes on each other occasionally, and I'm beginning to tell him this story as to who he's got in his jail. And at first he thought it was one of those jokes, you know. So I convinced him, no, this is a real deal. And so he hangs up, goes up to the courtroom and tells the assistant district attorney what's going on. They stop the proceeding. The judge appoints McVeigh an attorney. The sheriff takes him back upstairs and locks him up. Well, I was instructed to go to the sheriff's office, and the FBI would contact me there. So I was off, so I just drove my personal pickup in there, and I walk into the sheriff's personal office, and he's on the phone with an agent, hands me the phone. They want to know some particulars, and mainly where they were interested in where the car was at. Told them where it was at. They said, well, we'll be flying up there in a helicopter shortly. Can you meet us at the car? And so I said, sure. I get hold of my partner who's on duty. He picks me up. We respond up there. Just in a few minutes, we see a military helicopter circling, looking for a landing zone. They find one a short distance away from where the car is parked. And numerous ATF and FBI agents begin disembarking from this helicopter. As you can imagine, it caused some traffic confusion. People, we call it rubbernecking, you know, looking at what was going on. And we get the traffic situation under control, and the supervisor agent wants me to look in the car to see if it is still locked and if everything looked as it did 2 days previous. So I go up there, doors are still locked, windows are up. Everything I see inside was what was there 2 days earlier. So they're going to search this car, but they have to get a federal search warrant, and they want to take the car to a secure location and not search it alongside of a busy interstate. and I'm instructed to come back to the courthouse to meet an agent to take my statement. Well, in the meantime, my partner had got a call, and I'm left there stranded because I didn't have any transportation, so I called for another unit to come pick me up. We proceed to Perry. When we turned the corner to go to the courthouse, I thought a crime had occurred there, either in the courthouse or the courtyard while we were gone, because now the city police department has crime scene tape encircling the building. They have a canine on the ground. They got a secure perimeter set up by their officers. Numerous people are gathering up in the courthouse square, wondering what's going on. I approached one of the officers and said, "Can we enter, this secure area?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what happened here?" They said, "Well, nothing. The sheriff and the county commissioner was afraid that McVeigh might have friends that might try to either blow this building up to garner his escape. And so the building's been evacuated and we're maintaining a secure perimeter. We're allowed to go in. I take my FBI agent takes my statement, and I leave. Well, the next day, Saturday, I'm asked to go to the command post, and that also go to a local church in Oklahoma City with Governor Keating and meet with some of the victims' families. As I'm getting ready to leave that day, I always search my unit to make sure there was nothing in there that could be used as a weapon against me, especially if I'd had a prisoner in there previous. So I'm looking in my unit, and I look in the right rear floorboard, and there's a crumpled piece of paper right behind in the floorboard, right behind where McVeigh had been sitting. And I unravel that, and it says, it's a business card from a military surplus store in Antigua, Wisconsin. I'm looking at that, turn it around, look at the back, and it says, "I will need more TNT at $5 a stick after 1 May. And so whenever he was squirming around in my unit, and he telling me he was doing it because his handcuffs were tight, I believe he was discarding that card, stuffed it behind where he was sitting, and at some point it fell to the floorboard behind him. I took that card, put it in the envelope as evidence, took it to the command post, turned it over to an FBI agent. At a later time, they fingerprinted that card, and they found 2 sets of prints, mine and Tim McVeigh's. So I always wondered, him needing more TNT after May 1, did he have other targets? That was never confirmed that I know of, but that was my thought process. So, divine intervention. It started from the point that my assignment was canceled. I go to the ladies that were broke down, put me in a position to be behind Tim McVeigh and not in front of him, or I would have never made that traffic stop. And then, why is he still in jail 2 days later? Come to find out, the next day, Thursday, the judge was tied up in a divorce case and didn't see any new arrestees. So he would have saw him early Friday. But Friday morning, the judge's son missed a school bus to go to a band function in Stillwater, and he had to delay court because he had to take him over there. All of that has to be divine intervention, because Tim McVeigh was still in jail and didn't have an opportunity to hurt anyone else. Was taken into custody, was tried, convicted, executed for his crimes. And it shows that routine law enforcement works, that divine intervention was a big player in all of this, or I would have never been at the right spot at the right time. And he kept me safe. So, a terrible tragedy, but an amazing story. Well, out of that terrible tragedy and many lives lost and many people injured, what I heard from the families is it gave them hope that at least one of the people, at that point we didn't know how many people were involved, but at least one person was in custody and was going to be held responsible for what happened. And that happened big part, through the divine intervention. Now, I think they would have eventually caught him, but what other crimes could have could he have committed in the meantime that he didn't have an opportunity to do because of that divine intervention? And I think that gives us all hope to know God's working our lives every day.
Yeah, as you said, even those routine, police work that looks routine, but it can change the life of so many.
Oh yeah, so routine because you never envision yourself being a part of something like that from just doing your job.
Mm-hmm.